Hi everyone, we are going to learn about the excitations of hydrogen atom. So when we talk about excitations of hydrogen atom, it's actually the motions of electrons or the transitions of electron. It moves from a lower, from ground state, it moves to a higher energy stage which is greater than 1, where this greater than 1 is called excited state. So in other words, it is moving from the lowest energy level to the higher energy level. So how this excitations of hydrogen atom happens? So there are two methods of excitations. So the first one is by absorbing a photon, and the second one is the collisions between a bombarding electrons and the orbiting electron. So we talk about the first one first. So absorbing a photon, this is what in your Bohr's second postulate states that. Okay, this one, the electrons is moved from the ground state to a higher energy state, and when it moves from lower state to higher state or from ground state to higher energy states, means the electron is gaining energy. The energy must be provided to the electron so that it has enough energy to make an excitation. So where is this electrons come from? From the absorbing of the photon. So means that we have to put a photon to the electrons. So these electrons will absorb a photon which is equal to HF, and it will excite it from the ground state to a higher energy state. Okay, so this HF will be equal to the absorptions of this photon energy must be equal to En minus E1. So En here is actually the energy level in higher states. Okay, in higher states. Let's say it moved from n equal to 1, it moved to n equal to 3. So this one will be E3. Okay, so this photon must be exactly the same as the difference between these two energy level. If not, it cannot be excited to that level. Then for the second method is by collisions between a bombarding electron and the orbiting electron. So what is meant by bombarding electron? So if you look at this diagram, bombarding electron means we shoot an electron or we incident an electron through the Bohr models, and these electrons will collide with the electron which is in orbit. So when it has collisions, so part of this energy from this bombarding electrons will transfer to the orbiting electrons. Means these electrons will lose the energy, and this one will gain the energy. So this loss of energy will become the gaining energy of the orbiting electrons. Meaning your orbiting electron now gaining energy, then it will be excited to a more higher energy level, energy level. So of course this absorptions of energy must also be equal to delta E between the energy level is still En minus E1. So this absorption of energy is still in a discrete order because the energy difference between two levels are always discrete. So in other words, when we say the method of excitations by collide bombarding electrons is actually the transferring of energy from the bombarding electron to the orbiting electron. So it transfers the energy. Still, the bombarding electron still has energy, but it just transfers part of the energy to the orbiting electrons. Of course, in these collisions, there are two possibilities and two types of collisions. One is called the elastic collisions. What is elastic collisions? Let's say this bombarding electron collide with the orbiting electron, but this electron doesn't get excited. It doesn't transfer to an excited state. So it doesn't transmit from a ground state to an excited state. So no excitations. So no excitations means this bombarding electron does not transfer any of the kinetic energy to the orbiting electron because no loss of energy. This one, no loss of energy when there is no excitations. So when there is no loss of energy, is same Ke for the bombarding electrons. That is why it's called elastic collisions. If this electrons has excitation, so if this orbiting electron is excited, excitations, it moves from one orbit from the ground state to the higher energy state, then it will have the bombarding electrons will lose the energy. So when the energy is lost from the bombarding electrons, mean the bombarding electron now has less Ke compared to the before the collisions. Okay, I repeat. So when the collisions between the bombarding electrons, okay, bombarding electrons and these electrons, so this electron get excited to a higher orbit, so means that the bombarding electron now has lost the kinetic energy of part of the kinetic energy is being lost to the orbiting electrons, mean is travel, the bombarding electron now has less kinetic energy. So when we say kinetic energy is lost, then is a non-elastic collisions. Okay, so in short, when we say excitations of hydrogen atom, that there are two methods in excitations. One is absorb a photon, where this photon is your electromagnetic wave. So the photon that absorbed must be equal to difference between the energy level. The energy must be equal to difference between the energy level, which your HF is equal to En minus E1. And if the excitations is based on the collisions between the bombarding electrons, and the bombarding electrons will transfer part of the electron to the orbiting electron, and this electron will gain the electron and excited to a higher energy state, where this gaining of electron is actually equal to En minus E1, still equal to the En minus E1. And then there are two possibilities for these collisions to happen. One is elastic collisions. So when we say elastic collisions, kinetic energies of collisions, kinetic energy before the collisions and after the collision still the same, so means no excited, because bombarding electron doesn't have a loss in kinetic energy. But when the electrons is being excited to a higher energy level, then the bombarding electrons will lose some of the kinetic energy, and we call this one as non-elastic collisions. Okay, so that's it for this lesson. Thank you.